Hey guys, welcome back for another very exciting tutorial here at the PhotoshopTrainingChannel.com. My name is Jesus Ramirez. You can find me on Twitter at JR from PTC. In this tutorial, we're going to create a rock text effect using two images of real rocks. We'll start out by creating the background using the lighting effects filter. Then we'll create the text by applying layer mask, layer styles, and a few adjustment layers. To finalize the effect, I'll show you a few techniques you can use to enhance the lighting in the image. In this tutorial, we'll just focus on one letter, but you can use the same technique on multiple letters to create a word. Although we'll use various techniques and a number of adjustment layers to create a realistic effect, this is actually a very simple tutorial suitable for all levels, so give it a try. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. Anyway, let's get started with this tutorial. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this rock background image and turn that into a layer. Right now it's a background layer, so it's locked, so I have the move tool selected and I can't move it around. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold Alt and double click on the path lock here to turn that into a layer, and you notice that the name now changed to layer 0. I'm going to rename it again and change it back to background just so I know what this is. Then I'm going to click on the background layer, right click on it, and convert it to a smart object so I can apply some smart filters. Now I'm going to be applying some smart filters, and we're going to be using the channels to create texture for the filters, and I'm just kind of clicking through them to see which channel I might use, and maybe I'll use the blue one. We'll see, and I'll show you why I did that in a moment. I'm going to go back into my background layer and actually make sure all the channels are turned on so I can see it back in its original color. Then I'm going to go into Filter, Render, Lighting Effects, and I'm going to be using a spot for my lighting effect, and I'm going to scroll down, and where it says Texture, I'm going to select the blue one, which is the one I think that might work for this effect, and I'm going to increase the height to just 1. So there it is. And actually, let me just see what the other ones look like. Okay, there it is. And if you notice, what's happening is giving these rocks more depth. So let me increase the height just so you can see. You see how I move this around? It sort of looks like the rocks are going in deeper or higher depending on which way I slide the slider to. So if I leave it at 1, there is more height being added to the rocks. And you can also play around with these sliders if you want to. And just really quickly, just so you can see the settings I have here, I have intensity set to 12, hotspot to 27, colorize to 35, gloss to 28, metallic 87, and ambient 7. If you don't know what the sliders do, simply click and drag them to either side to see what they do, and maybe you can come up with a better effect than what I'm about to show you. Anyway, once you've applied your settings, press OK, and it's going to apply them to the smart filter, of course. And if you want to go back and edit them, simply click on the name of the smart filter, and it'll bring you right back so you can edit this if you want to. And by the way, you can click and drag these and move them around like so. You can also scale the spotlight. But anyway, I'm just going to press cancel just so we are working with what we had before. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply another filter to give it even more detail. So I'm going to go into Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, amount of 50%, radius of 2.5, and threshold of 0 would work. And let me click on this preview checkbox here just so you can see the difference, and you'll see the difference here actually. So you see it adds even more detail to the rock, so it's a pretty cool effect. And right away our background image is looking much better than it did originally. So I'm just gonna turn that up so you can see this is the before and this is the after. Let's move on to working with the text. I'm gonna click on the text tool. I'm going to click on the canvas, and I'm simply going to type a capital P using Arial bold size 14. And actually the size, I'm going to change that. I'm going to press Control T to transform, Command T on the Mac, and I'm just going to make this P bigger. Maybe something like that. And I want to center this to my canvas, so I'm going to press Control A to select everything. With the Move tool selected, I can click on these align icons here to align the P right in the center of the canvas. I'm going to press Control D, Command D to deselect. By the way, this method of centering was a tip of the day I did a while back, so if you follow my tips of the day on my Facebook page or my Google Plus page, you've seen this before. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into File, Place, and I'm going to select this rocktext.jpg image, which is available at my website, of course. And I'm just going to press Enter to place the image within my canvas. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hover over the type icon here, hold Control, Command on the Mac, and click on it to make a selection around that P. Then I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to click on the layer mask icon to add a layer mask in the shape of that P. I'm going to select the rock text and the text layer P and place them in that folder. Now I can turn off the visibility of this layer since I won't be needing it anymore. And we'll be working with the rock text layer here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click and move the layer around till I find an area that's got some interesting rocks that we can work with. And I'll just place that somewhere about here. I think that'll work. By the way, just so we're not distracted when we're working on the text, I'm going to create a new layer in between these two layers. I'm going to fill that with 50% gray, and by the way, I brought up the fill menu by holding Shift and Backspace. The only reason I'm doing this is just so the background is not distracting me. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. Anyway, now I can click on the layer mask, click on the brush tool. Make sure you select a hard brush and just play around the size till you get something that you feel comfortable working with. So for me, it'll probably be around 35. And actually, I'm going to click on the brush panel, and I'm going to reduce the spacing to just 1%. I want a hard, straight line when I draw with this brush. Now I'm going to zoom in by holding Alt and using the mouse wheel. And the key to creating this effect is to use the actual rocks in the image to create the text. And let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to be painting with black on the group layer mask. And you see how there's this rock that sort of comes out from the top part here? Well, if I start adding to it, it sort of looks like it's actually coming out. And I can paint with black, and I'll press X to paint with black and use the bracket keys to reduce the size of the brush. You see that? It sort of looks like it's actually coming out. And I can do that all over the image to create the effect. So maybe here I can hide those pixels there and use the shape of this rock to create the tip of that P. And I can do that all throughout the image. And I can create a pretty realistic effect. You can see that there. So remember, with black you hide, with white you show. So you might want to go into the text in some parts like here to follow the rock, or in other parts, maybe like down here, you can bring out some of the text just to match that rock better. And you can just keep pressing X on the keyboard or switch back and forth from white to black. And I won't take too much of your time. This is what I'm going to be doing for the next few minutes. I'm going to pause the video, and I'll just continue working on this text. And like I said before, all I'm going to do is just hide some areas to follow the shape of the rock. And in other areas, I'm going to show more of the rock like so. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'll come back to you as soon as I'm done. Okay guys, I'm back. I've gone ahead and masked out the areas that I thought were necessary to create this effect. And just to remind you, the key here is to mask according to the shapes of the rocks that are already in the image to create a more realistic effect. And try not to have any straight lines because they don't really occur in nature. So if you remove all the straight lines, things are going to look a little bit more realistic in your image. Okay, now that we've created this, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to convert this into a smart object, and I'm just going to call this layer P just so I know it's for the letter P that we created. And if you ever want to go back and edit this, you can simply double click on the smart object, press OK, and you have all the layers here, and you can mask something else if you want to. I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to close this, and I'm not going to save it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply a layer style to this. I'm going to create a bevel and emboss. I'm also going to check the contour checkbox here. And I'm going to leave the depth at 100%. The size, I'm going to change it to 10. Soften, we're going to change that to 8. And I don't want to use the global light because I want to control it independently. So I'm just going to move this around, and I'll leave it at 3921. And I think that'll work. As you can see, there's the shadow on the left here and the highlight on the right. If you remember, the light is coming from the right top of the image going downward, so the shadows would be where you see them there. And I'm going to change the highlight mode to overlay, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to 36 or so, and the opacity for the highlight to 60. And actually, you know what, 36 might not be high enough, so why don't we bump that up to maybe 55. And that looks about right. I also want to add an inner shadow to this to help shape the text better. Again, I'm going to turn off the global light, and I can click and drag the shadow, sort of place it wherever I think it would be. So if the light's coming from the top, the shadows would probably be around there. And I can increase the size to soften it up a bit. I'm also going to add a gradient overlay. And I'm going to click and drag this and maybe move the angle. Remember, light's coming from here, so this side of the letter will be brighter, and this will be darker. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply and bring the opacity down maybe 35%. You know what, actually soft light might work better. Yeah, I think soft light is working better. Maybe increase it more, maybe 65. I'm also going to add an outer glow. I'm going to change the color to black and the blending mode to overlay. I'm going to increase the size a little bit, the spread just a little bit. So maybe the spread I'll leave at 2%, the size at 10, and I'll bring the opacity down just a bit, maybe to 50%. And this is just going to help with the shadow, as you can see. And I'm going to add a drop shadow. I'm not going to use the global light. I'm going to click and drag it wherever I think the shadow would land. So light's coming from the top right, shadow will be on the lower left. Maybe here. And increase the size to make the shadow softer. And maybe decrease the distance. That might be a little too much. So maybe 9 pixels, 0% for spread, and the size of 9 pixels. And this is looking pretty good, so I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to collapse the layer styles just so we have more room to work with here. And things are looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click on this layer that I created, this 50% gray layer, and I'm just going to delete it since I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just so we can see the entire image. Now the P is looking pretty good, but it's definitely not matching the color of the background. So we're going to use some adjustment layers to fix that. So I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. The first one I'm going to create is going to be a levels adjustment layer. And I want to make a clipping mask out of that. I can do two things. I can hold Alt or Option on the Mac and click in between the two layers to create a clipping mask, or I can click on this icon right here in the Properties panel. With the Levels adjustment layer selected, I can just simply click on that icon. So you can do whatever works best for you. And what I want to do with this Levels adjustment layer is darken up my light color. So I'm going to click on this slider here and The number that I want is 180 or so. So 181 would work. So you'll see the difference. So it just makes the white colors gray. If I were to go further down, it'll make the whites black, but we don't want to go that far. So 180 works fine. I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, and this time it's going to be a curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to create an S-curve, and you probably have seen me make these S-curves a million times. I just love the way they work. Just create this S shape to give the image more contrast, like so. And as you can see, things are looking a little bit better, but the image is now too saturated. And by the way, I'm going to make that into a clipping mask so it only affects the P, not the background. As I was saying, the P is looking pretty good, but it's too saturated, so I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, a hue and saturation adjustment layer this time, and just bring the hue down to about -40 or so. So -42 is fine. And just like last time, I got to make it into a clipping mask so it only affects the P layer. And what I'm going to do now is something I showed you before. I'm going to show you how to create an advanced dodge and an advanced burn. And I'm going to make those into clipping mask as well. And if you've seen some of my other videos where I use this advanced technique for dodging and burning, then this will be a review for you. But the way this advanced technique works is by first creating a curves adjustment layer, and in the case of the dodge, making this image as bright as you would want it to ever be. So maybe I wouldn't want this image to get any brighter than that. That might be too much. So I'll leave that here. That's probably the brightest I would want it to be. Once I get there, I'm going to click on the layer mask icon, and I can just click on the invert button or press Control I or Command I on the Mac. And I'm going to do something similar for the burn, but instead of going lighter, I'm going to go dark. So what's the darkest I will want this image to be? And maybe that's the darkest I would want it to be in any area. Once I'm there, I'm going to press Control I to invert, or you can press the invert button here, up to you. And now I'm ready to start dodging and burning. So let's start with the burn first. Select your brush tool by pressing B on the keyboard, and select a soft brush, so maybe something like that. And I'm also going to increase the size of that brush by clicking on the bracket keys on the keyboard. And I'm going to decrease the opacity to maybe 30%. And I'll do the same for the flow. So flow and opacity both at 30. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start shaping this rock by painting with white. So I'm going to press X on my keyboard to set my foreground color to white. And by painting with white, I can make the areas that I paint darker. So I know I want more detail here. And by the way, this is a very subtle effect just because I brought the opacity and the flow down, which is what I want. I don't want to overdo it. So I do have to give it several passes before you start seeing any changes. But I'm simply shaping the rocks by adding shadows to it. And you might not be seeing what's going on now because of the video and the resolution of the video, but as soon as I do a before and after, you will see. And actually, if I do it now, you probably can see. So this is after and before. So as you can see, I already started shaping the rocks using this technique. And I'll do the same thing with the dodge. This time I'm going to add highlights. So where do I think the highlights are going to go? Maybe I don't need that many highlights in this particular image, but I do have the option to create them if I want to. Anyway, so why would you use this advanced technique of burning and dodging? Well, first of all, it's non-destructive, and second of all, you can change it. So now that I made these changes here, I can make those darker if I want to, or brighter. So you have that flexibility. So it works a little bit better than the regular burning and dodging. And you know what? I think I still need to work a little bit more on my burning, but just for the sake of time, I won't take as long as I would want to. But just keep in mind that, this could take you some time if you really want to get the shape right. But I'll leave things as they are now. I'm going to create one more adjustment layer, and this is going to be a gradient adjustment layer. And I'm going to set the colors from white to black, the style reflected, and I'm going to click on the reverse button there. And just so I can see how things are looking, I'm going to bring that to 1. So I want the line to go from this side to this side. So I'm going to change the angle of the line. We'll leave it at 129, that'll work. And I'm just going to increase the scale again to maybe that much. And I'm just doing it off of memory. I can click and drag this too, by the way. I think this is how wide the lighting is that we created earlier. Let me shut that off and see. Yeah, that seems to be about right. Maybe I could increase the scale just a little bit more. Yeah, something about 60% will do it. So what I'll do now is I'm going to click on the multiply blending mode. And now I can control the light that goes onto the image, like so. And by the way, this time I'm not doing a clipping mask. I could if I only wanted to affect the text, but I think that I want to do it so it does the entire image. So something like that. Maybe I can increase that to 60%, like so. And things are looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just click on the burn adjustment layer there, hold shift, press Ctrl G to group, and I'll name this P. So things are looking pretty good now. One other thing I want to show you is you can actually use the cracks. You can actually use the cracks on the background to help you further enhance this effect. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new layer mask, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to press B on my keyboard for my brush tool. I'm going to use black as my foreground color. And I'm just going to go ahead and by the way, actually I'm using the pencil tool. I must have pressed B once too many. And I'm going to increase the opacity back up to 100%. So, and actually I need a hard brush. So I'm just going to be working with this area here. Actually, even more. Maybe here. And now that I've gone ahead and deleted that, I can just simply come back and paint with white and just paint in around those cracks, like so. And again, I'm going pretty fast here. I could probably take my time and do a better job, but I just want you to get the idea. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out. So now I'm using the cracks that are on the wall to further enhance this effect. So maybe a long time ago this was a rock that was shaped into the letter P. Earthquake happened or something happened where it broke the wall, and it also broke the letter that was right on it. So you can do that if you want to. If not, you can just not do it and keep it as it was. But I sort of like that effect, so I'm going to leave that on. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to share this tutorial on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, or wherever you like to share your stuff. Also, remember to check out my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, where you can sign up for my free newsletter, where I'll send you an email every time I put up a new tutorial, and where you'll get access to my subscriber-only tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys again next time.